If you're like me and like nice things like jet skis and fancy cars like Honda Accords and home ownership, but can't afford those things, you buy fancy, cheap things. Now, if those things are shiny, it also helps because that's distracting. So a while back, there was a push by some members on Budget Light Forum to make an all-copper pocket thrower flashlight and one made out of stainless steel, but also with copper, because people have been clamoring for pretty heavier flashlights since the beginning of flashlight time. So after many months, these two lights were made, the Kronos X5 and X6, which are now rebranded as Astrolux models. Both models share the same driver, which is flashlight jargon for a flashlight computer, and the same XPL HI V3 D-domed emitter. This means they operate the same, although the bigger X6 is brighter and throws better and can beat up your dad and outrun you. The X5, on the other hand, is pretty much all copper constructed. It's tiny, has a D-domed XPL HI emitter like I just said, and a glass lens. It's got that knurling and a lighted tail cap button. It runs off a 14500 lithium-ion battery, which is the size of a AA, although it can't run off of AA's because they don't supply enough power. The X6, on the other hand, is quite a bit bigger, is made from stainless steel with some copper in the center to help draw away heat from the emitter. Now, both these lights require unprotected high-drain lithium-ion batteries. The X5 is probably the hardest one to buy a battery for because there aren't a ton of high-drain 14500s out there. I use a purple eFest, which I will link in the description. The X6 also requires high-drain unprotected cells, but there are a lot of good high-drain unprotected 18650s out there. So you're like, copper, man, what's a big whoop? Is this like plumber porn? High-powered single LED flashlights generate a lot of heat. Smaller flashlights have the biggest problem with heat, so basically adding copper helps draw away heat from the emitter, helping the flashlight to run brighter and longer, be driven harder, and give you the power to fly into space. So let's pretend the dimensions are important to you for a few seconds and go over them. I said before that these were heavy flashlights. You wanted to believe me, but I didn't say it convincingly enough the first time, so here it is. Cool, so both of these lights share a common driver and therefore operate the same, so let's go over the modes. These are my estimates with my DIY lumens measuring device. Each light has up to 7 modes. Starting with the lowest mode, 1. Then mode 2. Then mode 3. Then mode 4. Then mode 5. Mode 6. And then there is mode 7, which is the highest, or turbo, and this one is thermally regulated. While these lights may not seem advanced at first because they're shiny, they have a pretty advanced driver, which I will not show you how to program entirely, but will go over its basic operation and show a short demo of the UI. I will link the full instruction manual in the description so you can see all its features. Anyway, briefly, you can have just about anywhere from 1 to 7 modes, have moonlight mode, turn on or off mode memory, make it ordered from low to high or high to low, set your own comfortable temperature level for the light, like when it's on turbo and it gets too hot, well, you can set the temperature at which you don't want it to go past. Anyway, basically this light is pretty much fully customizable. You can make it a 1 motor, you can make it a 7 motor, because you're an adult and you can make choices without somebody having to supervise you. Anyway, the operation is simple. I have enabled moonlight mode and it has all 7 modes. I turned off mode memory and have it set to always turn on in moonlight because I don't like getting blasted in the face with the bright light. I like working up instead of back. So I click the switch fully to turn it on. When I do this, you'll notice the tail cap stops glowing. Then I do half presses to scroll through all 7 modes. Then click it once to turn it off. No visible PWM is present on any mode, so it's suitable for photography or videography, kind of like, this video. So since this is sort of an abbreviated review of 2 lights because I have a ton of other projects that I'm working on for the channel, I'll do one runtime test on high with both lights. Expect the lower and lowest modes to run for days and medium modes to run hours, just like on all modern flashlights with well-regulated brightness levels. With the smaller X5, the battery runs for right at about 30 minutes. It starts out high, stays high for longer than the X6 you'll notice, but then quickly fades as a much smaller battery runs out. The X6, as you notice, has thermal regulation. The light heats up and the light cuts power to get it cooler. Now this is the factory thermal default regulation, so you can set it higher or lower in its configuration mode, which I didn't go over. I ended the test on the X6 at about 5 hours and 43 minutes with light still coming out. The light has a low voltage cutoff of about 2.5 volts. so it won't over discharge your battery if you forget to turn it off. Although I highly recommend having a few extra cells on hand for the X5 if you like running it on higher modes, because it doesn't last long on its brightest level. I used an eFest IMR 14500 650 milliamp hour high drain battery for the X5 and an LG high drain 3000 milliamp hour HG2 for the X6. Okay, how about some beam shots? I'll do a section for the X5 and then the X6 with my new layout. I know it makes the video longer, but I feel like it's easier to read because people told me it was. All lights are set to their maximum output for this test per flashlight science. First, the X5. The X5 is the smallest and throwiest light I've ever encountered. Now, you'll have to note smallest and throwiest, meaning that there are throwier lights, but they're bigger, but there's smaller lights that are more powerful, but not as throwy. The throw is about half the X6, but the X6 is a bigger light. It's not quite as throwy as the Nitecore MH20GT, but it's brighter. That's also a bigger light, too, with a bigger reflector. The Zebralight SC600 Mark III High is smaller, but uses a bigger battery. The X5 is brighter and much throwier than the Zebralight, but the X5 has a bigger head, so it's less pocketable. You get it? I know there's a lot of technicalities here. And it'll have much shorter runtimes too because it's a smaller battery, the X5 of course. The Armytek Prime A1 is smaller in diameter but doesn't come close in the output or the throw. And the Predator Pro is throwier slightly, but it's less than half the output, so it's not as bright for closer up stuff. Keep in mind all these lights have strengths and weaknesses. Okay, now the X6 compared to the others. Keep in mind the X6 is a much heavier light than the rest because it's made out of stainless steel and copper, and only the Armytek Predator is bigger. The Predator is about a third as bright as the X6 and not near as throwy. A lot of this is due to the different emitter in the Predator. The Prime is a much smaller light and it's designed to light up closer ranges with a much more diffused beam pattern. The Zebralight also is designed as an everyday carry light. It's plenty bright, but has a larger hotspot and it's better at closer ranges than the X6, but it's also good at some outdoor stuff too. It's a good compromise. The MH20GT is a smaller light, but it's not as bright or throwy as the X6. I prefer the X6 over the MH20GT. If you need a throwy outdoor light, the X6 is the king of the whole competition, at least this competition. It's the brightest and throwiest light of the whole bunch, but it's also the heaviest, and it's the second biggest. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. There's no way around it. Both of the lights are some of the best throwing and brightest lights in their size class. They have highly advanced and customizable drivers, more so than just about any other flashlight you can buy. The amount of work put into the fit and finish and the design of these lights is impressive. The Astrolux versions retail for about $60 each right now. I think I paid $90 for both of these together when they were the Kronos versions. There's not much in this price range that matches the performance of either lights. The use of copper helps improve thermal performance in both lights so that they can be hot rodded to the outputs they have. Copper is the key to hot rod lights. They both include clips, lanyards, and spare tail cap covers. Included also is a black tail cap cover just in case the blue glow bugs you, sort of kind of like it does me. One thing to note before I stop talking about the lighted tail cap is if you're going to be using these lights sparingly, I'd recommend taking the batteries out. For people that use these lights several times a week, there's no concern, but the lit tail caps do mean there's a tiny parasitic drain when the light is off. It's next to nothing, but like most lights, you shouldn't store batteries in them for long periods of time when they're not being used. That's just a general good rule of thumb, right? And since these lights don't have any other method of lockout, since they're not made of aluminum or anodized, mostly anodized, you can't lock out the tail cap. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this review, subscribe to my channel, give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you'd like to learn more about the development of this light, check out the video description below, where there's links on how to mount the LED in the tail cap, and how to operate the programming mode, and I don't know, a bunch of more shit.